What would it feel like to be truly, deeply happy, regardless of your circumstances? Did you know that happiness is a choice and not a result? That you can create your life on purpose? Join us now to learn more. This is the Time to Rise and Thrive radio show. And here's your host, mindset coach, and facilitator of change, Jackie Mott.
Hello, happy Friday. Oh my God, I'm so glad it's Friday. I can't wait for a little bit of a break here. You are with me for Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I'm your host, Jackie Mott of Phoenix Coaching in London, Ontario. And today we've got a really great show. We're going to be talking about mindfulness. Ooh, yes, it's one of those things, right? It's one of those things that we know that we're supposed to do, right? It's one of those things that we know we're supposed to do. We know it will make our life easier. We know all of this stuff, and yet sometimes it can be tricky to actually practice it. Sometimes it can be tricky to understand what it actually is and how to do it. So that is what our show is about today. So today's show is called The Art of Mindful Living. We are talking about how by learning to be mindful and responding to the circumstances we find in our lives, we can avoid the consequences and guilt that comes from thoughtless emotional reactions. And it's a whole lot more than that. So we're going to get into the meat of it in just a minute, but the show description for today's show is when we aren't purposeful about what's playing on our subliminal soundtrack, we live and make decisions based on knee-jerk reactions. And that's because we're operating from that emotion, right? So, when we practice the art of mindful living, we learn how to respond as opposed to react. And that's a huge difference. Even if you just sort of play with the energy of those two words, when we respond to the circumstances, it's from a place of like, okay, what's necessary here? What's required here? What do we need to do to make this as easy on everybody involved as possible? When we react, we're coming from that emotional place where like somebody just said something that really hurt my feelings. Well, blow it out your ass. And here, I'm going to sting back. I'm going to smack you back. And that is almost never helpful. I suppose there are probably some limited circumstances where that kind of a reaction is appropriate and helpful. But most of the time, it takes us into a place where we're operating not from a place of empowerment and not from a place of making good choices for ourselves, but it's that like being at the mercy of somebody or something, right? So that's what we're working on. On our show, Time to Rise and Thrive, we talk about the subliminal soundtrack. We talk a lot about the subliminal soundtrack. And I'll give you just a little bit more information about that in a minute. But we talk about how to make it work for us rather than against us. We also talk about seeing our unique beauty and what kind of a contribution we are to the world in at large, and also to the people that we really care about. Those our inner circle. We want to affect them in a positive way, most of us, whenever possible. And so we're looking at all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. So when we are responding to things, we are behaving in a different way. We are coming from a different place than when we react. And that's usually the problem point, where you're going to have the biggest, most unpleasant impact on other people or on the situation, because sometimes when we react in a way that is not helpful, we can actually make things a whole lot worse for ourselves, right? So, when we're talking about mindfulness, what does it mean? What does it mean to be mindful? And so I sat with that for a little while this morning. I had a bit of a meditation and I let myself have some space with that particular idea. And what I came up with is that it's really about being present with whatever circumstances we're working with, and not from a place of judgment, because there are often things that we cannot change. COVID, perfect example. There is absolutely nothing we can do about this particular circumstance. We have to wait for, whatever we have to wait for. There's not a whole lot we can do with that, but we don't have to be at the mercy of it. We can be making choices that are going to help us and move us forward in our lives rather than reacting from a place of fear or a place of anger or whatever those sort of unpleasant emotions are. Not that we don't feel them, but we're not allowing them in the driver's seat. We are the person who's in the driver's seat. We're going to choose how we are going to be under those circumstances. So allowing the circumstances to be what they are, and this is tough, man. If you're a bit of a, person who likes to be in control of things, I don't know anyone like that. Not certainly not me. If you're the kind of person who enjoys being in that place where you have the illusion of control in your world, um, and it is an illusion, really, because we can't. The only thing that we have control over, truthfully, the only thing we have control over is ourselves and how we are going to respond in whatever circumstance life deals out to us. Do you understand that? Because we can't control the weather, we can't control other people's actions or reactions, we can't control so many factors. So where we have our power place is we get into that space where it's like, okay, can't control what's happening here, but I can control what I'm going to do with these circumstances. That's your power place. So one of the things that it's really important to kind of get to an understanding of is that when we are coming from that highly emotionally charged place and reacting to the circumstances, we are actually expending far more energy. And it's not that we don't have the emotions. So please don't hear that that's what I'm saying, because that is not even a little bit what I'm saying. But when we're coming from that and we react in that space of highly charged emotion, it not only often will make things worse, but it's a waste of our energy. So if you are in a place where you've just found out about something, and I'm going to tell you something happened this week. It's so interesting to me because when I have this plan and this schedule, the schedule, right? The control, that right. So when I plan my schedule for these shows, here's what almost always happens. I almost always, in the week leading up to the show, almost always run into something that is going to challenge me to walk my talk. So you're going to teach this on Friday. You had best be in a good spot to do that, Jackie. And you better know what you're talking about, because when you don't, you can impact other people in a bad way, right? So it's very interesting to me how the universe just throws these circumstances our way. And that's what happened a couple of days ago. We got we got some information about a circumstance. It's a health challenge that somebody who's very, very close to me is going to need to work with. It's a pretty big one, not life threatening, thank God, but it will change things. And so the figuring this out and what do we do and all of that kind of stuff has been very much a part of my last 3 days, even this morning. And so this it's not that we don't have our emotions. We absolutely must allow ourselves to have whatever feelings we have about whatever the circumstance is. And I mean, this is any circumstance, right? Like somebody dies, somebody that we care about dies or leaves our world in some way. You are going to have feelings. And if you don't allow those and you don't deal with them, it's going to be so much worse later. So it's very, very important that we allow ourselves to feel what we feel, but we also need to be conscious of where we are acting from. Are we acting from that place where we're sad, we're angry, we're hurt, we're whatever? Or are we acting from the place of being mindful and doing our best to create the circumstances that need to be created under those circumstances? Wow, I'm saying circumstances a lot. Isn't that crazy? Anyway, so that is sort of where I arrived this morning at this. What does mindfulness mean? So what happens? What happens when life dishes us out some circumstances or a situation that we don't particularly want to deal with? Well, you know, the world changes. And we can very easily get off track and get to a place um, mm, where it's that powerlessness place, being at the mercy of things. It's not hard to go there. In fact, it's really easy to go there. Um, So when we are dealing with those circumstances, what can we do? What can we do when we find the when we are forced to face the fact that we have no control? It is a hard thing. It is a hard thing for people like me and like a lot of the other people that I know, because we really want to be able to fix it, especially when it's happening to someone that we love, don't we? We don't want our kids to have to go through certain things. We don't want to watch our parents or our friends or our partners go through certain things. And sometimes, sometimes we really want to just don that cape and tights and hop in there and fix everything. And maybe sometimes you can. It's not probably the best way to go most of the time for a number of different reasons, but we're going to have a show about that in a couple of weeks. So I'm not going to go too far into that. But very often that is our gut instinct. I want to fix this for my person because I love them. And it's hard for me to watch them hurt or struggle or whatever the case may be. But, there are also a lot of circumstances where that's not even an option. And so what we have to do is we have to process the feelings and allow them, and also allow the circumstances to be what they are. Work to a place where we have the best plan that we can, bring in the team that we need. I've got some really concrete steps that we're going to go into in the third segment of the show. But one of the things, I've done several different coaching trainings. I've got a whole bunch of different certifications and whatnot. And my newest mentor in that, she talks about managing the gap. So, what that basically means is that we start here and we need to be here, or we desire to be here. What do we have to do with this? What do we have to do with this space in between, this gap between where we are and where we want to be or need to be? What has to happen there? And that is the stuff that we're going to talk about in the third segment. Um, so I've got one of the quotes that I pulled this morning, which I forgot to read, that should have opened the show. It says, "Nothing can harm you as much as your own thoughts unguarded." So unguarded thoughts can take us into really crazy places, right? When we are not conscious of stuff, that's where so many of our shows, we've talked about this, dancing with your demons, and it's that unconscious, not mindfulness, like whatever word, right? It's that space where those dark, ugly things live that can throw us right off track. So one of the things that I'm going to share with you, and I may have shared this before, I had a hysterectomy a few years ago. And when I was dealing with the health circumstances leading up to it, I promise you it wasn't easy and it wasn't fun. And it was really quite scary. There are a lot of things that I knew were going to change, not just the fact that I could no longer bear children, but these are some pretty serious changes physiologically to my body. And how's that going to affect me? How's it going to affect me physically? How's it going to affect me emotionally? Am I going to be able to feel the same things that I have felt before? Am I going to be able to have the same sensations that I've had before? All of that other stuff. So it was something that needed to happen. It was something that was good for me under those circumstances. And yet there was a whole lot of other stuff that I could have gotten bogged down in. And I did get bogged down in from time to time. And that's okay. It's okay for you to have whatever feelings you have. It's just important not to act from those feelings. So we're gonna go to our first break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about this whole idea of mindfulness and how to accomplish it, because it can be a bit tricky. You got to get a hold of your mind. You got to take your mind out of the driver's seat and put yourself there from a place of consciousness and awareness of what's working, what's happening, what do I need to do right now. So our next quote, I'm going to say it's Pima Chodron, but I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. It says, "You are the sky. Everything else is just the weather." Interesting, right? Yeah, I really liked that one, and I like the picture that goes along with it, but my printer, for some reason, is printing in black and white, so I'm not going to be able to show you any beautiful pictures today. So you are with us on Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I'm your host, Jackie Mott. When we come back, we're going to talk more about learning to be mindful, what it means to be mindful, and how we can actually stop ourselves from getting ourselves into more messes, sometimes from reacting to our circumstances by actually learning how to respond appropriately. So we will be right back.
What do you tell yourself when you're not listening? This question came to Jackie Mott when she was trying to find peace and purpose in the wake of tragedy. She began to understand that a lot of her pain and choices had been the result of how she perceived herself and her place in the world. And she set about creating a new subliminal soundtrack that would support her in creating a life of abundance, joy, and fulfillment. To learn more about how she did that and how you can do the same, join Jackie on her radio show, Time to Rise and Thrive, every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central, 11 a.m. Mountain, and 10 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is the Time to Rise and Thrive show with mindset coach and facilitator of change, Jackie Mott. To participate in the program, join our live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. For more information, visit phoenixcoach.ca, where you can follow Phoenix Coaching online. Now, back to the program.
Hello and welcome back. You're with me for Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I'm your host, Jackie Mott. I'm so glad you're with me today, and I'm so glad it's Friday. All right, our next quote. Our next quote that we're going to have for today is I am on Facebook. I follow certain pages that often have, positive messaging and stuff like this. So this one is one of them. It's called Healing Energy Tools. I'm not entirely certain who the author of the quotes are, but every day they do this thing. So I'll show you just briefly, and it had really pretty colors behind it. November 16th, 2020, the universe is saying to you today, trust that you are on the right path in all ways in your life. Focus on what is working for you. Focus on the positive in your life. Have faith and trust that all is going to divine plan. So when I was thinking about this segment of the show today, I was thinking about some of the things that have helped me get through. And so I'm going to share some of those with you during this segment. The first thing, the first thing is I've got on my list is resilience. Now, resilience is a skill. Resilience is the art of learning how to get back up when life knocks you down. And I remember taking my son to the emergency room many years ago, and there was an article in like they had, some magazines or whatever. I was sitting there waiting. So I grabbed one of these magazines because it said right on the cover something about resilience. And I always love to read these things. I want to hear other people's perspectives and gather as much information so that I can provide good information to whomever I'm talking with. And I remember reading this article as I sat there waiting for him. And I thought, this is kind of ridiculous. It's kind of ridiculous because what it was saying was that, we need to get back up when life knocks us down. And I thought, do we need to be told that? Like, do we need to be told that we're not supposed to lay down and die when we come across difficult circumstances? Do we need to be told that? And I found it just fascinating that somebody had actually thought it important enough. I found it fascinating because my life is resilience. I'm the phoenix. Things come along, I fall down, I get back up. My life burns down, I come screaming back up from the fire and the ashes, and that has been my world. And I understand that other people haven't had the circumstances, they haven't had the life that I've had, they haven't had the people in their lives that I've had. So it was very fascinating to me that it was of enough value and importance to be put in one of these major magazines. I don't know which one it was, but it was one of the big ones, for someone to write about resilience. And I thought, wow, that's really crazy. Anyway, so resilience is about getting back up when you're knocked down. It doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down, it matters how many times you get back up. So as long as you get back up one more time, then you have been knocked down, you're good to go. You're good to go. And the fact of the matter is that when you get back up, you now have this learning that you didn't have before. So you can incorporate that new learning into your world, into how you be in your world, into how you practice whatever it is that you need to practice, your mindfulness, gratitude, any number of different things, right? So you aren't defeated until you stay down. But it's also important to mention that sometimes surrendering to the circumstances is absolutely the right thing to do. If you are in a battle with somebody and there is no way that you can win it, for whatever reason, maybe it's the circumstances, maybe it's the person on the other side of the battle, like who knows what it is, right? Sometimes for us to make our peace with our circumstances and get on with our own stuff, it is necessary for us to just decide that we're done fighting. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the resilience piece is there's so much consciousness that goes into it because we need to decide that we're going to get back up. But are we going to get back up and fight, or are we going to get back up and walk away? Because sometimes the walking away is the right way to go, and that's okay. So we need to be mindful as we are deciding how we're going to be with whatever it is that we're going to be with. Second thing that I wrote down this morning was faith. I don't know what your belief system is. And and sometimes I probably don't know what my belief system exactly is because to try to define it can be tricky. But I grew up in a Christian home. I believe in a God. I believe in, universal laws, and I believe in karma, and I believe in a whole bunch of other stuff, right? Um, what I've found is that the faith is often the thing that I grab onto when stuff really looks difficult, when it really looks dark, when I'm not sure how I'm going to get through this particular thing. There is and I wish that I could give you the quote, like the actual location, but I'm absolutely certain it's biblical where it says that God will never give you more than you can handle. So when I've been faced with the most difficult situations, circumstances, times in my life, I have always grabbed onto that and held on tight. I would not be here experiencing what I'm experiencing if I did not have what it takes to get through this. So that also will help you strengthen that resilience muscle. But whatever your belief system is, however you believe, whatever you believe in, Um, I think it's very often helpful when we are facing really difficult circumstances to grab hold of that belief system, whatever it is, and know that you're not alone. Whether it's your tribe, whether it's your spirit guides, or, like there's so many things that people talk about. There's the really woo woo kind of stuff, and then there's the stuff that's actually real. I'm sorry, that was actually not the right way to say that. There is stuff that is physical, and there is the stuff that's not physical. I would rather say it that way. So when we are forming our belief system, it is very, very important for us to understand that we are never alone. We are never alone. We are always supported. We have what we need to get through any circumstance that presents itself in our lives. We already have it. And if we don't, then we can find it. Okay. So the next one, next one I've got on my list here is practicing gratitude. Gratitude is so important because there is not a faster way for us to shift our energy from a place of, oh my God, to a much more comfortable, much more healthy place to be than by remembering the things that we have to be grateful for. And when you get really good at this, you can actually sometimes very quickly go into a space of, even in this icky situation, what do I have that I can be grateful for? Sometimes the stuff like, so let's go back to the hysterectomy. The hysterectomy was not, it was a life altering situation, but it was not a life threatening situation. So if I have nothing more to be grateful for than the fact that I'm not dying, I know I'm not dying. Like, does this suck? Yes, absolutely. It sucks. And I'm going to survive it and I'm going to get through it. And I have the right people to take care of what needs to be done and all of that kind of stuff, right? So find your gratitude in whatever your circumstances, no matter how hard they are, you can find it. And, even if it's a matter of, I have a roof over my head. I have a roof over my head and there are a lot of people in this world that don't. So I'm going to take a moment and just be really grateful that I don't have to worry about that. I know I have to worry about this, but there are so many other things that I do not have to worry about. So, gratitude, practicing patience with yourself. So, when we're dealt a certain hand, when we are dealt a certain circumstance, when we have those emotional responses, and we all do, there's no avoiding it. When your life goes off kilter, you're going to have an emotional response to that. So practicing patience and allowing yourself to have those feelings, to enjoy what you can and face what you can and argue and like all of that. It is absolutely normal. When you lose someone you love, when we lost my sister, there was nothing that I could do about that. She was gone. So I had to have that grief. I had to allow myself the space to grieve. So being patient with yourself as you work through those feelings and incorporate whatever it is that you need to incorporate into your world, because your life has changed. So there is now a new normal. And that's one of the things we're hearing thrown about all the time. There's a new normal. So what does that look like now that this person is no longer part of my landscape, right? Getting to that place where you can adjust is the thing that takes some time. Allowing yourself to feel what you feel, allowing yourself to work through whatever emotions that you have. And one of the things when I was thinking about this particular thing, so we work toward our healing. We work toward our healing. And there are certain times when whatever it is that caused that thing, like the hysterectomy, there was nothing that we could do about that except to remove the damaged portion. So as long as that damaged portion was still there, it was very difficult, if not impossible, for the healing to begin. Okay? Does that make sense? So the healing needs to start, but sometimes the stimulus needs to be removed in order for the true healing to begin. So whatever you need to do to work through your circumstances until you get to that place where that thing is gone, do it. Whatever gives you joy, whatever gives you peace, whatever gives you happiness and comfort and all of those sorts of things while you're working through these things, it's okay. Allow that. Allow that for yourself. It's all about the choices that we make. And we're going to talk about that more in a little bit. But, when you're dealing with something like a diseased part of your body, um, so for example, um, somebody I know has Crohn's disease, and they were talking about how in order for the bowel to heal, which I didn't even know it could, in all honesty, like this is what I know about medical stuff, right? In order for the bowel to heal, they need to get the inflammation under control. So that's the thing. So the inflammation is the thing that's causing the biggest problem, right? Once the inflammation is under control, then the healing can begin. So if you're still working through whatever that inflammation may be in your circumstance, it's okay for you to have whatever feelings that you have about those things, and it's okay for you to need some support. And again, we're going to talk about all of that kind of stuff. So working toward the healing, getting your tribe in place, having your tribe in place so that you know that you can call on those people when you need their support. Very, very, very important. And also very important, something that came to me this morning. I have a friend named Betsy and she's brilliant. Every once in a while she throws something at me and I'm just like, oh my God, that just changes the whole ball game. And I remember years ago, we were talking about something where I was getting sort of sucked into something and I didn't want to get sucked into it. And I was mad at myself and there was all kinds of ick, right? And she said to me, well, the only thing that you did wrong was you went to the hardware store looking for a loaf of bread. And I went, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? She says, well, like that this person is going to give you that when you go to them looking for support. So if you go to them looking for support, then you got to own it, honey. You got to expect that that's what they're going to give you because that's what they've always given you. So you don't go to the hardware store looking for a loaf of bread. You go to the other person that gives you what you need in that moment. And that's where you get that support. So very important for us to be conscious about our tribe. So our next quote before we go to break is from Eckhart Tolle. Now he is a pretty smart guy. And it says, wherever you are, be there totally. We have this minute right now. That's all we're guaranteed, right? So wherever you are, be there totally. Be present in the moment. Isn't that brilliant? All right, so you are with me on Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I'm your host, Jackie Mott. Today we are talking about mindfulness and about how to be creating the circumstances from a place of mindfulness, not from an emotional reaction. And that's where we're at today. So we're going to head to our break. We will be right back.
What do you tell yourself when you're not listening? This question came to Jackie Mott when she was trying to find peace and purpose in the wake of tragedy. She began to understand that a lot of her pain and choices had been the result of how she perceived herself and her place in the world. And she set about creating a new subliminal soundtrack that would support her in creating a life of abundance, joy, and fulfillment. To learn more about how she did that and how you can do the same, join Jackie on her radio show, Time to Rise and Thrive, every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central, 11 a.m. Mountain, and 10 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
What do you tell yourself when you're not listening? Our subliminal soundtrack plays in the back of our minds 24/7. It's filled with everything we've ever learned about money, relationships, body, and sexuality, about every single aspect of our lives. If you don't have what you desire, the Subliminal Soundtrack Reset program may be the very key to changing it all. In this 8-week program, designed by Jackie Mott, you'll learn to replace messages that stop your desires with new ones that not only support you in creating what you truly desire, but expand your life to higher levels of joy and pleasure. Go to phoenixcoach.ca today to sign up and begin creating your life on purpose.
This is the Time to Rise and Thrive show with mindset coach and facilitator of change, Jackie Mott. To participate in the program, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. For more information, visit phoenixcoach.ca, where you can follow Phoenix Coaching online. Now, back to the program.
Hello and welcome back. This is Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I'm your host, Jackie Mott. So this is the time when we are supposed to talk about all the wonderfulness that's happening in my world. And there's a lot of wonderfulness happening in my world right now. So if you've been paying attention, you will have noticed that I have become part of an organization called Powerful Women Today. We launched a London chapter. I think it was last week was the launch. And so what this organization is about is it's all about empowerment. It's all about getting a handle on your life and your circumstances and, getting things into a place where you can create that life that you desire. And, it was so perfectly aligned. That's why I chose to get involved with it. So we will be launching our monthly sessions in December. I think it's December 10th is the first online session. There will be in-person groups that will be joining after the pandemic passes. For the moment, we're going to do everything on Zoom. So anybody is welcome, at least for a couple of sessions. Anybody's welcome to come out and check us out. I will be posting that information in Facebook and whatever. So that's the other thing. Best place to get information is probably on Facebook. So find Phoenix Coaching in London on Facebook and like and follow or whatever it is you do to the page there, and you will get updates on everything that's going on in my world, at least my work world. So now we're going to get back to the show. Today's show is called The Art of Mindful Living. We are talking about how by learning to be mindful and responding to circumstances in our lives, we can avoid consequences, we can avoid guilt, that kind of stuff that comes from like thoughtless, overly emotional reactions. So responding rather than reacting. So our next quote is from Rashid Ogon Laru. Yeah, I really hope I'm not butchering people's names. Wouldn't it be awful? Don't want to do that. Anyway, so this one says expectation has brought me disappointment. Disappointment has brought me wisdom. Acceptance, gratitude, and appreciation have brought me joy and fulfillment. Isn't that lovely? When we get to a place of peace with things, and that's what we're really shooting for, right? We want to get to a place of peace with our circumstances, whatever they are. So I made a bit of a list on sort of what I do and what, other people do from the learning that I've done when we are in this position. So, sort of the things that are required of us to be mindful. First and foremost, keep breathing. Just keep breathing. When we lost my sister, I remember there was a moment where I literally had to tell myself to keep breathing because it was such a shock. And just keep breathing. That's the thing. Just keep going, keep breathing, yes, because some of these circumstances that we find ourselves in will shock us to the point where we don't have the ability to do that. So number one, you've got to keep breathing. And if you can breathe deeply, very good for you. It helps so much of the body. It helps so much. So the next thing is acknowledging your feelings. Again, just allow yourself to feel what you feel. There are times when things change really dramatically, really quickly. When we were driving down to the funeral home after my sister passed, it was the day after, and I remember being in this space, and I was in the back seat of the car, and we were going down this country road, and there was this man on one of those lawnmowers, the riding lawnmowers, and he was riding along like nothing had happened. And I mean, for him, nothing probably had, right? That's the thing. For him, nothing really had. For me, my whole life seemed to have turned on its ear. And I remember having this moment where I was just like, how can he be doing that? How can he be doing that? He's mowing his lawn, but Jenny's dead. And it was such an interesting thing because of course, like there's that emotional side of us, and then there's the side of us that goes, well, of course he's mowing his lawn, right? Because he's not dealing with this, you know, he probably whatever. He's not dealing with this circumstance. He's not dealing with the circumstance that I'm in. And so we have to remember that the world goes on, that we are going to go on, whether it's for a limited period of time or whether it's for an extended period of time, we will go on. So it's the momentary thing of those circumstances where we need to get a handle on what does this mean? And that's another thing that's very, very, very important when we're talking about being an allowance of yourself and being patient with yourself. When your world changes drastically, one of the most difficult things, in my humble opinion, is that we don't know what it means. We don't know where that is going to impact or how that is going to impact or what changes we need to make, or there's so much to that, right? It's uncharted territory. There will be fear, there will be anxiety, there will be all kinds of emotions that come up when we are going into uncharted territory because we don't know what to expect. Perfectly normal. Perfectly normal. So allow all of that stuff, allow it to process, allow it to leave. And if it comes back up later, that's okay. It's okay. You know, there are times when I think about my sister even now, and she's been gone for 8 years. There are times when I think, man, I just wish that we could talk about this because I know that she would find it really funny, or I know that she would really love this story, or you hear a song or something. There's so many circumstances, and that person pops up. So here's the mindful piece. Here's the mindful piece. When we've allowed the emotional side to process, when we've allowed ourselves to release whatever that is for us, then we can actually get to a place of appreciation. Because how lucky am I to have had her? How lucky am I to have a place in my heart where I can think, oh my God, this person would find this thing so funny. And oh my God, how lucky was I to have her to experience those funny times with before? Or how how blessed am I to have had whatever I had? It's gone now. Life has changed. And I can be in a space of gratitude that I actually had that thing to begin with, can't I? That's what I'm talking about. It's about the reframing. It's about how am I going to look at it? Am I going to hear that song and burst into tears? Maybe. But am I going to hear that song and burst into tears because I can't function? Because I'm still so deep in my grief several years later, I haven't processed, I haven't dealt with those feelings? Or am I going to have that moment where I allow myself to cry and then get on with my life? Because life goes on, right? Yeah. So that's what we're talking about. This mindfulness is the thing where we are moving through our world in allowance of the circumstance and in allowance of whatever it looks like, and not making it wrong, not making ourselves wrong. Not making ourselves wrong. There was a talk that I gave, actually. It was specific to the loss of my sister years and years and years ago. And I remember at the end of it, because I always get, whenever I tell that story, I I always get a little bit choked up. I always get a little bit emotional. There's always a few tears. And I remember this lady came up to me at the end of it and she said, "Oh, I've got this lady that you need to talk to." And I went, "Oh, okay. What do I need to talk to her about?" And she said, "Oh, about your grief." And I went, "All right. Um, okay, what are your thoughts?" And she said, "Oh, well, it's been, I think, 2 or 3 years, whatever it had been at that point, and you still cry." Hmm. I do. And I probably will. And that's okay. That's okay. So you have to get to a point where you are okay with whatever your circumstances are and how you handle that, because it's not up to somebody else to say, well, you're wrong for having a few tears about somebody that you miss. In her world, that may be true, and that's okay. There's no judgment about that, but it doesn't make it wrong in my world. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So the next thing, in my humble opinion, that we need to do is say what is required. I'm sorry, I got a tickle in my throat. Just a sec, guys. Sorry about that. So what is required? So if you've got a medical situation, is it that you need to take a certain type of medication? Because, if you're diabetic, then you're going to need to take insulin. Or maybe you're not. Maybe you can adjust it with your diet. But is it something that requires a certain amount of medication or a certain type of medication? Is it something that requires surgery? Is it something that is going to heal if you just rest? Right? So what's required under these circumstances? In a situation where, you're dealing with a loss, a death, or a relationship ending, or whatever the case may be that's caused you to go into a space of grief, do you need to go and talk to somebody? There's nothing wrong with that. If you need some guidance or someone to help you through the rough spots, there is nothing wrong with that. And I would very much, very highly encourage you to go and seek some help if that's what you need. Do you need to surround yourself with your family? Do you need to surround yourself with, your friends or your whatever? What is required for you to get through whatever it is that you need to get through? When I was thinking about money, I thought, okay, do we need to make a budget? Do we need to, reorganize how we're spending our money? Any area of your life, figure out what is required for you to get through the circumstances that are coming. Now, the managing of the gap, right? So we are here, we need and want or desire to be here. What do we have to do in the middle? So what resources do we need? What people do we need to bring into our world? in your business. We've talked about this on the show before. There are people that do stuff that I'm not good at. My website guy, Brent, right? Um, I can try to do it myself. And it's going to take me forever to get the same thing done that he's going to have done in a couple of minutes. So does it make sense for me to do it myself, or does it make sense for me to allow that person into my world to help me? And it can be hard sometimes to allow people to help us, right? Because we kind of like that control thing once in a while, don't we? Just me. It's just me. So managing the gap, bringing in the people and the resources that we need. Who do we have to talk to find out what we need to find out? All of that kind of stuff. Um, the last thing is when you find yourself in the position where you've kind of gone off the rails, and perfectly normal. Allow it. Patience with yourself. When you go off the rails, especially with big changes, guys, perfectly normal for this to take time and, practice for us to get to the other side of it. But when we realize that we've gone off the rails, when we realize that we've gotten caught up in that overly emotional place and we're no longer functioning from the mindfulness, what do we have to do? Again, breathe, challenge challenge your thoughts, challenge your beliefs on whatever it is, right? Don't go into the space of I'm so bad, I'm so wrong, all of that crap. Don't do that. Don't even entertain it for a moment. Allow yourself to confront the truth of whatever it is. No, you know what? I have the resources. I have the people. I am okay. Life is going to go on. Okay? Confront and challenge your thoughts. And when you need to, reach out for help, but make sure that you're being discerning about where you're going to for that help. Do not go to the hardware store looking for a loaf of bread. Okay? So that's what I've got on that. So our next quote is from James Baraz. It says, mindfulness is simply being aware of what is happening right now without wishing it were different, enjoying the pleasant without holding on when it changes, which it will, being with the unpleasant without fearing it will always be this way, which it won't. Isn't that wonderful? Oh, and Christine says no control freaks in here. Yeah, right. I love you, Christine. Yeah, okay. So you are with me on Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I am your host, Jackie Mott. And when we come back, we are going to wrap up our conversation about mindfulness, about responding rather than reacting, and hopefully avoiding some of those crazy spin-offs that happen when we get overly emotional and we act from that space. All right, we will be right back.
What do you tell yourself when you're not listening? This question came to Jackie Mott when she was trying to find peace and purpose in the wake of tragedy. She began to understand that a lot of her pain and choices had been the result of how she perceived herself and her place in the world. And she set about creating a new subliminal soundtrack that would support her in creating a life of abundance, joy, and fulfillment. To learn more about how she did that and how you can do the same, join Jackie on her radio show, Time to Rise and Thrive, every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central, 11 a.m. Mountain, and 10 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
What do you tell yourself when you're not listening? Our subliminal soundtrack plays in the back of our minds 24/7. It's filled with everything we've ever learned about money, relationships, body, and sexuality, about every single aspect of our lives. If you don't have what you desire, the Subliminal Soundtrack Reset program may be the very key to changing it all. In this 8-week program, designed by Jackie Mott, you'll learn to replace messages that stop your desires with new ones that not only support you in creating what you truly desire, but expand your life to higher levels of joy and pleasure. Go to phoenixcoach.ca today to sign up and begin creating your life on purpose.
This is the Time to Rise and Thrive show with mindset coach and facilitator of change, Jackie Mott. To participate in the program, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. For more information, visit phoenixcoach.ca, where you can follow Phoenix Coaching online. Now, back to the program.
Hello and welcome back to Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I am your host, Jackie Mott. So, our next quote is from Buddha. It says, "Our life is shaped by our mind, for we become what we think." Now, in all honesty, I've got some conflicting feelings on this particular quote because our mind is also the place where things can go completely off the rails, isn't it? When we are operating solely from our mind and not allowing ourselves to have those feelings or to trust our gut or to, you know, follow our heart, all of that kind of stuff. When we're operating solely from our mind, isn't it interesting how things can just get like really out of control really fast? Have you ever found that? I think like, oh, okay. So go back to the guy that's mowing the lawn, right? I could have easily gone into a space of, man, what is he doing? He is so wrong. Like we are dealing with this, and right, mind, also emotion. Interesting. Interesting. So the mind is very important, and we need to be careful how much power we give it and how much control we give it because it can spin us off into crazy places. It's never happened to me. Has it happened to you? The mind spinning us off into crazy places. That doesn't happen ever. Never, ever, ever. So one of the things that I want us to be very conscious of is we always have a choice. Always have a choice. We can face whatever circumstances we are dealing with from a place of, this is so hard and I can't do this and it's not fair and it's wrong and it's bad and it's this, right? We can do that. We can do that, or we can make the choice to be in more of a space of, okay, it is what it is, and this is what I need to do. This is how I need to move forward so that I can make my peace with whatever the circumstances are, being an allowance of whatever they are to be exactly what it is. Because especially, if we're in a position where we're dealing with a health challenge, for example, our bodies are basically rebelling against us, right? That's often what is happening. A system isn't working the way it's supposed to, and there's not often a whole lot that we can do about that, except work with the medical professionals, do what they advise, and so on and so forth. But I am never going to have a uterus again. I had a hysterectomy, it's gone, right? So if I were in this space of making that wrong or bad, then I'd be living with this place. I'd be living from this, like, there's nothing I can do about this. So don't put your energy there. Put your energy into, what's my next step? What do I do with this? Okay, there you go. So practicing gratitude, adjust and learn to work with whatever the new normal is in our circumstance. Adjust and learn to work with it. There you go. So that's really what I've got for you today. Our last quote, the one that I'm going to leave you with, is from Ralph Waldo Emerson. And you should try to say that one 10 times fast. Holy cow, it's a mouthful. He said, write it on your heart that every day is the best day in the year. He is rich who owns the day, and no one owns the day who allows it to be invaded with fret and anxiety. Finish every day and be done with it. You have done what you could. Some blunders and absurdities no doubt crept in. Forget them as soon as you can. Tomorrow is a new day. Begin it well and serenely, with too high a spirit to be cumbered with your old nonsense. Ooh. This new day is too dear, with its hopes and invitations, to waste a moment on the yesterdays. Isn't that lovely? The last line of that is my favorite. All right, so we will be back next Friday, 1 p.m. What are we? Eastern time, 12 noon Central, 11 Mountain Time, and 10 Pacific. And next week's show is called Be Discerning. Whose voice do you give power? Ooh, yeah. Don't forget to go to phoenixcoach.ca to download your free copy of 3 Easy Ways to Reset Your Subliminal Soundtrack. Thank you so much for being with me today. As always, I really appreciate everything. I appreciate everything. Like, I'm so blessed. I'm so blessed. I've got Christine, I've got Kim here, great production team. We are just, we have so much fun. So I am your host, Jackie Mott of Phoenix Coaching in London, Ontario. Have a great week.
Thank you for joining us for Time to Rise and Thrive radio show. Jackie Mott will return next Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 12 noon Central, 11 a.m. Mountain, and 10 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Have a fantastic week, and remember, it's your time to rise and thrive.